Hello everyone, good evening. I hope I am audible to you. Okay, so today we are continuing with the NCERT series and we have completed the class 6 textbook last week. I hope you have went through those sessions, and if you have any doubts you can ask regarding that. Anyway, Standard 6 textbook has been comprehensively covered in the past week. This week we will be looking into the class 7 textbook. One second. Okay. One second, there is some issues with my pointer. 1 minute. Okay, so this week we will be looking into the class 7 textbook, okay, our past 2, and this is medieval history, okay, medieval history, our past 2, and there will be 5 lectures in this series, and by Friday we will be completing this textbook also, okay, and after that we will move on to standard 8, 9, 10, 11 and finally plus 2. Okay, and the entire NCERT series for the history as far as your UPSC civil service examination will be covered. Afterwards, we will start with specialized textbooks, okay, like R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra, Bivan Chandra and so on. Alright, so the target is completing this textbook by the end of the current week. So welcome to the class again. Thank you for joining. And let me start by introducing you to Unacademy. Okay, after saying a few words about Unacademy, I will start the session. So please be patient. Alright. So Unacademy is India's largest learning platform. Alright. So you guys already know this. If you have not already gotten a subscription, please do get one. Okay, because we offer you daily live classes where you can chat with the educator, engage in discussion, clear your doubts. All these are possible for you. Along with that, we will also provide live tests and quizzes. Okay, tomorrow it is Tuesday, so our session will begin with a quiz. I hope you remember, Tuesday is our quiz day. Okay, Tuesday is our quiz day. Quiz will be general only, okay? I mean, for your UPSC civil service examination, the quiz will be conducted via the Unacademy learning app. You have to be in the app in order to participate in the quiz, not YouTube. Okay, tomorrow our session will start with that, and once the quiz is over, we will go with the remaining portion. Alright, so live tests and quizzes are given to you. Then structured courses are there, for which means whatever exam you are preparing, the entire syllabus for that examination will be comprehensively covered. And along with that, you will get unlimited access to all the relevant Unacademy materials. Okay, so all these are given to you via Unacademy. All you have to do is download the Unacademy learning app from Google Play or App Store and get a subscription. Okay, so yeah, this is about me. I am Madhav Sankar R Warrier. This is my Telegram channel. Here you can subscribe to get all the updates, PDFs, class schedules, etc. etc. Okay, and this is my Unacademy channel. Here you can click the follow button and follow me so that you may not miss any of my scheduled classes. Alright. Don't forget. So Unacademy brings you all these great educators from all over the country, and if you take a subscription for the UPSC package, you will get all these things: polity, governance, history, current affairs, economy. Okay, so along with all these basic things, you will also be getting optional courses, practice and strategy sessions, answer writing courses for mains. Okay, so Unacademy is like a one-stop destination for your UPSC preparation. Okay, so make sure to get a subscription. So the current rate of Unacademy subscription is as follows. This rate is going to be increased very soon. So if you are planning to get a subscription, please do get one ASAP. Okay, so from 1 month onwards, the subscription starts at 8,000 rupees, and 1 year it costs you 44,000 rupees. But if you use my code MSRW1, then actually you can get this for 39,600 rupees. 10% deduction is available to you if you use my code MSRW1. Similarly, for a 2-year subscription also, upon using my code, you can avail a 10% reduction. Okay, so this subscription which gives you all the basic things, is known as the Plus subscription. Okay, so far what I have told you, all these are available to you in the Plus category. But there is another one called the Iconic. This subscription is specific for UPSC students only, for the civil service aspirants alone, not available for other exams. Okay, so in Iconic subscription, if you take 1 year subscription, the rate will be 64,000, and again 10% reduction applicable upon using my code MSRW1. Similarly, 2 years also same things are here. One important thing to note here is what are the benefits of Iconic compared to Plus. Iconic will have everything the Plus has. Along with that, you will also get a personal coach, which means a person will be there to guide you as a mentor throughout the exam preparation time. Okay, and along with that, you will have the daily mains answer writing practice, study planner, personalized feedback sessions. Okay, all these will be given to you if you go for an Iconic subscription. Okay, so please do pick one of these subscriptions and do subscribe using my code MSRW1. Alright, so this is a peek into my Unacademy channel, unacademy.com/MSRW. You can go here and watch some of my free videos. Thereby you can assess the quality of the class and all, if you would like. Okay, also this week itself, maybe day after tomorrow onwards, I will be starting another class on world history in the Unacademy app in this link. Okay, probably from Wednesday onwards, that class will start on world history for UPSC mains. Okay, so do follow me there. Anyway, thank you. That's all about Unacademy, and we are starting today's sessions. NCERT Class 7 Medieval History. Okay, part 1 of 5. There will be 5 lectures all the way to till Friday, and today we are looking into the first 2 chapters comprehensively. Okay, these are very important, so I hope you are ready. Let me just get the comments up, okay, so that I can see your questions and all. Let me just take that in my phone. 1 minute. Yes, hello everyone. Hi Sachin, hi Swati, good evening. Haven't seen you for a while. Amisam, hi. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Now let's begin this discussion. So one thing I want to make it very clear to you. This is very important, okay. Many people think that just studying R.S. Sharma textbook or say for Medieval India, Satish Chandra sir's textbook alone will get you through. No. NCERT is of utmost importance for UPSC and not just the 10th and 11th textbook. Okay, basic textbook like Standard 6 and Standard 7 are also very, very important. This year in the UPSC 2020 prelims, there was a question from Standard 6 textbook. Okay, exactly same wordings. UPSC basically copy pasted that passage into the question paper and asked you a question. So you cannot simply skip just because it is 6th standard or 7th standard. These are very important, and I will be taking it comprehensively. I will be spending time on each topic and discussing it elaborately so that you won't miss a thing in all these textbooks. Okay, so let's begin. Good evening Ravut, good evening Rajesh, good evening Altaf. So chapter 1, tracing changes through 1,000 years. If you have any doubts while I teach, you can put it in the YouTube live chat and I will get back to you immediately. Okay, so chapter 1, tracing changes through 1,000 years. So if you remember, in the Standard 6 NCERT textbook, we studied ancient India. Okay, we studied how people were hunter-gatherers, nomads, and then they started agriculture, they started settlement, then they went through many socio-economical changes. First kingdoms started to come up. We looked briefly into Mauryas, Vardhanas, Guptas and all. Okay, and now what we are going to look is the start of medieval India. Okay, so the first question is, why do we call this medieval India? Alright, there was ancient India and there is this medieval India. So what is the difference? Or did one fine day suddenly medieval India start? No. There is a gradual progress from ancient to medieval India. So this differentiation between ancient and medieval is brought in by some social as well as economical changes that happened. Okay, very specific and very, very emphatic changes happened in many spheres of life. And that is why historians choose this as a separate era or separate period in history called the medieval Indian history. So we will be looking into what all those things are, and we will be brushing on other some minor topics also today. Okay, so tracing changes through 1,000 years. So basically medieval India is about 1,000 years. That is why the heading is so. Alright, so now let's look at a couple of maps before we begin. One map was made in 1154 CE. CE stands for Common Era. Okay, I hope you know this. Common Era. Alright, this map is prepared by an Arab geographer called Al-Idrisi. I will show you the map. Okay, Al-Idrisi. And there will be another map. This map made in 1720 by a French cartographer. So who is a cartographer? Cartographer is any person who is associated with making of maps. Okay, a map maker is known as a cartographer. So let's look at these two maps. Alright, here we go. This is the map is really huge, but I am showing you the area of India only. Okay, these are in the first map by Al-Idrisi and the second map by the French cartographer. See these two maps. In both these maps, this is north, this is south, east and west. Okay, those are all same things only. But see how this India is pictured here. Alright, so this is basically India as far as 1154 CE is concerned. Okay, and around 1720, this is the map. See the huge difference here. In the first map, if you see, this is nothing like India that we know of. See this? How is India shown here? I have no idea. Okay, there is a huge island kind of thing shown here, and this is this part is basically India. Okay, and this is Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is shown towards the north of India, and India's shape looks nothing like anything we know. Okay, and all these places are marked in Arabic. Okay, so this map is nothing like the world which actually exists. This was made in 1154. Now look at the second map, this one by the French after 600 years. And see here India is much better shown. There is the coastlines are very well marked. Sri Lanka is right where it is supposed to be, and we see places like Mongol, Kanauj, etc. here and there. Okay, so basically the India's shape is coming up by the start of this map. So within 600 years of time, okay, this is 1720, this is 1154. So around 600 year difference is there between map 1 and map 2. Okay, so by this 600 years, see how much has changed. How much has historians studied about Earth. Okay, how much have we improved on mapping different areas on a two-dimensional plane. Alright, so this is how we actually start developing in technological field as well as geological field. So both these maps are from quite different perspectives, but of the same continent, showing India only, Indian subcontinent only. In the first map, as we saw, we are seeing Sri Lanka towards the north of India. Alright, and the places are named in Arabic language, and we see some of the places like Kanauj in Uttar Pradesh and all. Okay, in the first map, all this can be seen. Second map, which is more familiar to us, the coastal areas are very well marked, and this is done by European sailors and merchants on their voyages. See, very important. When we start drawing a map, a person starts drawing a map only when it is necessary. Okay, so only when the sea voyages start to become more and more pronounced did the necessity for identifying various coastal areas of a country become important. Okay, if we are moving from say Mongolia to India, is there any need to draw India's coastal lines? No. We do not have to cross the sea at all. But when the European sailors started moving around, they dominated the sea, and they wanted to have clear coordinates of various countries and places if they had to reach the target area. That is the necessity which caused the development of cartography. Okay, and that is why within a very small period of 600 years we moved from map 1 to map 2. Okay, within 600 years we were able to do this. Remember, there is no satellite. Okay, there is nothing like high funda stuffs. This is still 1720, so technology is still very low. But we still managed to create such a beautiful map of India with all the coastal lines or it and all things very well marked. Okay, see this pointed edge near Sri Lanka. This is very precise. Even now, if you look at the current map of India, you can see the exact patterns in the map. Okay, such kind of development happened due to the need of creating maps, which started by the increase in sea voyages. Okay, so equally important is the fact that science of cartography differed in the two periods. So the methods used to make map 1 and that used to make map 2 are entirely different. Okay, by the time of 1720, people began to understand a lot better on various things based on positions of stars, positions of planets. All these things were more and more well studied. So technologically we were considerably better than what we were in 1154. That is the reason why we are able to produce the second map. Now let's look at some terminologies that are associated with these maps. Okay, historical records exist in a variety of languages which has changed considerably over years. So what are the issues while we look into the historical chronicles? When I taught you ancient India, I told you that, say, take the term Raja. Okay, the term Raja refers to something in the Harappan period or say in the Vedic period, and after the Vedic period, by the time of the dynasties, the term Raja referred to something else. Okay, so the same term is referring to two different things in two different periods. Clear? So it is important for the historians to understand what period they are referring to. Okay, and also thereby establishing what it means. Okay, for example, Persian. Say Persian is a very old language. Okay, Persian language existed for a very long time now, and right now also Persian language is there. But the current Persian language and the Persian language of about 500 years ago are hugely different. Not at all the same. Okay, so we cannot go by the current meanings or current contexts in order to understand the old literature. Clear? So this is one of the main challenges the historians found while looking through the old textbooks and other literary works. The difference is not just with regard to the grammar and vocabulary. The meanings of the words also changed over time. I just told you that with the example of the term Raja. Okay, Raja has three different meanings in three different periods. In the Vedic period it means something, in the later Vedic period it means some other thing, and during the dynasties it meant the third thing. Okay, so based on the time, the language, its grammar, its vocabulary, its meaning, all these things will keep on changing. Okay, now take the term Hindustan for example, another example. Okay, instead of Raja, let's look at the example Hindustan. Hindustan, today we understand that it is India. Right now, if I say I am a Hindustani, it means I am an Indian. Okay, to the world also, the term Hindustan means Indian. But consider the 13th century. What does 13th century means? 13th century means 1201 to 1300. This is the 13th century. Okay, in this time, during the Delhi Sultanate, okay, what is Delhi Sultanate and all, we will look into later. But understand, in the Delhi Sultanate, this was the time when a group of kings called the Delhi Sultanate ruled India. And during this time, there was a king known as Iltutmish. Okay, Iltutmish. And this Iltutmish had a person, a chronicler. Chronicler means somebody who records all the things and stories and all for the empire. That is a chronicler. Okay, and a chronicler named Minajai Siraj. Okay, so Minajai Siraj was a chronicler in the kingdom of Iltutmish. And Minajai Siraj used this word Hindustan, okay, in order to denote the areas of Punjab, Haryana and the lands between Ganga and Yamuna. So in the Indian map, you know where these places are now. Punjab, Haryana, lands of between Ganga and Yamuna. Let me just show you a map, okay? Okay, for example, take this map. So Ganga, Yamuna is here. Okay, so Punjab is somewhere here. Haryana is also somewhere here. So this much area was represented by Minhaj Siraj as Hindustan, not the whole of India. Okay, now after some time, during the time of Babur, who is Babur? Babur is the first Mughal emperor. Okay, after Delhi Sultanate, the Mughals come into India and they started their dynasty. So Babur is the first Mughal emperor. So when he came to India, he used the same word Hindustan to describe the geography, fauna and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. Okay, instead of using the term to represent the geographical feature of India, he used the same term to represent the fauna, culture, etc. of the inhabitants of India. Same word. Okay, Minhaj Siraj is used to denote Punjab, Haryana and Ganga, the area between Ganga and Yamuna. Same word Babur used to describe the fauna, culture, etc. of the inhabitants of India. Now, another famous person, Amir Khusru. Okay, in the 14th century, another person called Amir Khusru came to India. And he used the same word, Hindu or Hind. Okay, and by using this term Hind, he actually used it to represent what we call India today. Okay, although it doesn't actually have any political or national meanings at that time, but even then, he used the same term, more or less like Babur only, to represent what is the Indian subcontinent. So the same word, Hindustan, has three different meanings here. One by Minhaj Siraj, one by Babur, and one by Amir Khusru. These two are almost the same, but still, we have something like three different meanings. Now, look at another perspective. Okay, say term foreigners. So who are these foreigners? Come on, what do you think? Who are these foreigners? Foreigners, for us, foreigners means what? People coming from America or say from England or China. All these are foreigners to us. Now, anybody who is not from India are foreigners to us. But consider the medieval time. In medieval time, the nation of India does not exist. Was there an India in the medieval time? Was there an India in 1500 or 1400? No, right? India came into being very, very late. Only in the 19th century, the concept of India actually came up. But before that, we had lots and lots of princely states. We had dynasties. We had kingdoms, empires. We did not have a country called India. Okay, so within the Indian subcontinent itself, say the Cholas ruled the southern India. Okay, and just above them, Pallavas ruled. So for Cholas, Pallavas were foreigners. Clear? Just like Portuguese or Spanish people. For Cholas, Pallavas were foreigners. Or say Chalukyas were foreigners. Okay, but for some people within their empires they are native people only. Okay, so you have to understand, when we use the term foreigners in medieval or ancient Indian context, it means something entirely different than what we are thinking right now. That is what I am trying to put into perspective. Okay, so these are the importance of new and old terminologies. Whenever you use a word in a context, you have to understand the timeline where you are using that word. And based on that timeline, the meaning of that word changes. Okay, I hope I am clear. Good evening. Saubhagya, hi Swati. Yeah, correct, 1526. You are a genius in that, so I know. Seema, yeah, correct, Mughal. Now, historians and their sources. So we studied about, we now understand what are the difficulties historians face in identifying sources and learning from them. Now we are going to look at what are the sources of historians. Okay, what are their sources and how did they identify all these things? They are speaking about 1500 years before data and all now. So where did they get all these things? I know the things that have happened after 2000. Okay, I was born in the 1990s. So from 2000 onwards, I know the story. But what happened, say, 1000 years ago? What happened 2000 years ago? How do we know all this? Okay, so what are their sources for medieval period? In ancient India, we saw that there are numerous number of sources. For example, most of them were archaeological evidences. The archaeologists go to some place and they do the digging and they find artifacts from Harappan civilization or say from Mauryan period. Then we saw about inscriptions, then manuscripts. Okay, these were the chief sources in the ancient times. Now we are going to look at the sources in medieval India. What are the sources of medieval Indian history? Historians use different types of sources to learn about the past depending upon the period of their study and nature of their investigation. Okay, so these are the factors that determine the source of the study. Which period are they studying? This is very important. Based on that period, you have to choose a particular source. Okay, then nature of their investigation. So what are they looking into? Are they looking into the administrative area, or are they looking into the economy, or are they looking into some old stories or religion? So based on the topic or the nature of their investigation as well as the period of study, the sources keep on changing. It can be different sources. Clear? For example, if you want to study about religion, you have to look into a religious textbook rather than reading the king's manual. Clear na? Instead of, if you want to study about kings and their administrative methods, you have to read the inscriptions or the royal orders rather than reading some drama written by Kalidasa. So based on what the nature of investigation is, our sources also change. Okay, so they rely on coins, inscriptions, architecture and textual records for this investigation. So these are the various sources available to us. Coins, obviously. Inscriptions are also there. Great emperors and kings used to place inscriptions at various areas in the kingdom so that people can read that. Then architecture. We have monumental and beautiful temples and other structures built in medieval period. We will look into all that, okay? Don't worry. Then textual records. We have dramas, we have short stories, we have poetry. All these are available to us. Literary works. Okay, these are the main sources for medieval India. But there is also considerable discontinuity. Okay, even though we have all these sources, it is still not possible to get a complete holistic picture of the period. We are talking about a span of 1000 years. Okay, so in order to connect these 1000 years, we need adequate materials. Otherwise, the story will not be complete. There will be some missing areas in between. Okay, for example, say one source gives us information about 1500 to 1525. Okay, another source gives us information about 1550 to 1600. Alright, so what is missing? 1525 to 1550. What happened? We don't know. Okay, that part is missing. So even though we have lots and lots of records, we are still unable to completely picture the storyline of medieval India due to the lack of continuous resources. So that word is important, continuous. Clear? Now, the number and variety of textual records increased dramatically during this period compared to the ancient India. Okay, compared to ancient period, people started understanding more languages. They started writing down things. They started keeping proper records. Okay, so all these things increased the number of sources and number of records. In ancient period, what did people do? People painted in caves and rocks and all these things. So that was not complete, or that was not systematic. But by the medieval period, things began to become more and more structured, okay, more and more oriented, which means we are able to get more and more number of records that are reliable to us. Alright, so another important thing is the paper, availability of paper also gradually became cheaper. If you remember, in the ancient classes, I told you, paper was first invented in China. Okay, and China kept paper for a very long time. But the art of paper making spread throughout the world, and the paper became cheaper and cheaper by the time of medieval period. Okay, so what happened? If you get more and more paper, there is more and more availability of resources, which means you can record all these things in the paper. Okay, so availability of such materials also enhanced record keeping. And therefore, we are able to get more and more records from medieval period compared to ancient period. Clear? Now, manuscripts were collected by wealthy people, rulers, monasteries and temples, and these were placed in libraries and archives. I told you, by the time of medieval period, we have Delhi Sultanate, Mughals, etc. etc. These wealthy ruling class always used to keep libraries and archives. Archives means what? An area where historical sources are stored. That is an archive. Okay, we have, for example, we have the Vatican archive. In the Vatican archive, very old textbooks regarding Christianity are stored there. Okay, in India also we have multiple archives where historically important literature is stored. Okay, so manuscripts were collected by wealthy people and other ruling class people, and they kept it in libraries and archives. You know what a manuscript is. I am not going to explain it again. Okay, for example, if you see in that film, what is it, Manikarnika? In that film, if you see that Kangana Ranaut talks about this Harsha Charita. Remember that? Harsha Charita. So a manuscript of Harsha Charita was available at Jhansi's library. If you remember that film, that is how it is shown. So similarly, such important textbooks are placed in the libraries of very wealthy and ruling class people. What is the advantage? The advantage is that such ruling class people will rule for a very long time. They will have their own sons and their grandsons, etc. will continue their dynasty, which means the dynasty will last for a very long time. So as long as the dynasty lasts, these manuscripts and these sources are saved. For example, the Mughals came into India in 1526. Babur came to India, as Swati just told us. Okay, and Mughals left, the British took over the Mughals only in 1857. Completely uprooting. Okay, even before that they lost power and all, but still complete uprootment happened only in 1857. So a very good 300 years is there. So whatever Babur has had in his library could have been saved for 300 years because that dynasty was powerful enough. Okay, so such important dynasties helped in preserving important textbooks from medieval period. Okay, now as scribes copied manuscripts, they also introduced some changes. So what are the challenges here? One challenge is that in ancient times, we did not have a photocopy machine. Okay, that is a huge backdrop. We do not have a photocopy machine, or we do not have a CD or a camera. So what happened? In order to copy something from one book to another, you have to write it manually. Okay, you have to, you do this, right? When you are at school, you miss a day's class, what happens? The next day you go to school, you take the notebook from your friend and then you copy it. But what is the problem? The problem is that if you cannot read the handwriting very well, what happens? The thing that you copy will also be wrong. You will have to guess and then write a word. It might not be the same. Correct? If the handwriting of your friend is not legible, then you may not get the exact copy as you require. So the same thing happened in older times also. The scribes, what did they do? They actually made multiple copies of the same textbook. But the problem was, if the original textbook was not written legibly or neat enough to understand, each time the scribe copies to another paper, he can make mistake, or he will have to guess and replace some words. Okay, so the original copy and the final copy will be hugely different. Are you getting it? Same goes for translations. We have the original Ramayana in Sanskrit, and then that is translated to English, Malayalam, Hindi, etc. 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 Each time it is translated, what happens? Something changes. The original Ramayana in Sanskrit is not same as the Hindi Ramayana. Why? Because the person who translated into Hindi used some of his own inputs there. Translations are never the same. Okay, so all these factors will affect the historians while deciphering history. They cannot rely on a particular source more than what is required. Okay, that's what I am telling. Even though we have all these sources, still we have challenges because the reliability of the source is in question. Okay, so for example, say here you can see a miniature painting. Okay, this is a miniature painting. What does a miniature painting means? Miniatures means very small paintings. Okay, this painting is actually 10.5 centimeters by 7.1 centimeters. That's small. Just just the width and height of my palm. That's all. Such small painting. So even then, this is very beautifully painted. Now, so what did people do now? They actually tore this painting from the original book and sold this painting separately. This also happens. When there are beautiful pictures and designs in a book, people will take it away and place it as a separate content and sell it at a higher cost. Obviously, paintings will attract a high cost. So selling it separately from a book will give them more money. So that also was prevalent. So we do not have complete textbooks. We have missing pages. We have irrelevant information. We have unreliable information. All these are challenges. Now look at the image given below. Okay, this is actually verses of the Quran by various Islamic sculptures. Okay, we can say, for example, if you have went to Taj Mahal, you can see many calligraphic notes of Quran written all over Taj Mahal in the entrance and all. Okay, so these are two fonts shown here. The first font here, it is called the Nastaliq. Okay, this is the Nastaliq font. See, this is very evenly spaced, very clear, very legible, easy to understand, very beautifully written. Okay, that is known as the Nastaliq style. This is Akbar's favorite style. Okay, the great Mughal Emperor Akbar was a loud calligraphy, and Nastaliq style was his favorite calligraphic style. Second one, this style. Okay, this is known as Shikhaste. Shikaste. Okay, Shikhaste. Shikhaste, look at the difference. Shikhaste is very the spacing is not there. It is congested writing, very overlapping and or it is not legible or clear. Okay, highly compact writing. So compared to Nastaliq, historians can easily read Nastaliq style because they are very evenly spaced, very legible, easy to understand. But the Shikhaste style of writing is hard to decipher because many overlapping, congested, not easy to read. Okay, so based on the type of writing also, the job became more and more challenging. So all these are the issues and challenges faced by historians while going through the sources available to them. Okay, unreliability, irregularity, then the kind of calligraphy used, missing pages, discontinuity. Okay, all these things. I hope I am clear regarding that. Yes, Swati, correct. Saubhagya, correct. Okay, so now we have an idea about how historians are getting all these things and what are they looking for and what are missing. All these things we know. Now let's look at social and political changes and groups that happened at that time. Okay, one by one. Scale and variety of developments that occurred over the period. So this is what differentiates medieval India from ancient India. In medieval India, we had some serious changes or developments in the political as well as social spheres, also technological spheres. Okay, some changes occurred. These changes actually dramatically impacted the way of life in medieval times, and this change caused the historians to designate this period of 1000 years as a separate period called the medieval India rather than ancient India. Okay, so new technologies made their appearance, like the Persian wheel for irrigation. You can see here, this is the Persian wheel. Okay, the image shown here is from your NCERT textbook, the Persian wheel, and this is used for what? What is Persian wheel used for? It is used for irrigation. A person sits there and turns the wheel, and the wheel has many cups or buckets kind of structures here, and each time the wheel comes up, it will carry water in that bucket, and it will be taken into the field through some channel and all, and then again the wheel rotates, takes some more water. That's how it works. The Persian wheel, it was invented. 2. Spinning wheel for weaving. In ancient times they had to do it all handmade, but now we have spinning wheel, so it is easier to weave. Then firearms in combat. We see that Babur used gunpowder and artillery during his wars. Ancient times, what were the stuffs we used? We used spears, we used swords, okay, and such weapons which are not exactly explosive, only minor, swords and all. It is not big. But during the medieval times, we have artillery, we have guns, we have other such explosive devices. Then new foods and beverages arrived in the subcontinent, like potato, corn, chili, tea, coffee. These are not ours. Okay, tea and coffee, it did not exist in India before. They were actually brought to India by the foreign travelers at that time. Tobacco, for example. Tobacco has been brought to India by whom? The Portuguese. Portuguese brought it to India. Cashew nut, same. Okay, so these kinds of crops also came to India or was brought to India by the foreigners. So this also helped in changing Indian economy. Why? These tea and coffee plantations eventually led to the development of estates. We have tea estates and coffee estates, plantations, and then it started to become more and more commercial. Okay, and this what? Increased the labor. It increased the revenue, income. This indirectly contributed to the economy, which indirectly contributed to the society. Everything is connected. Okay, so all these things caused a great mobility in all spheres. Okay, mobility not just in movement of people, but in all spheres. Movement of people also. European travelers started coming to India more often. Trade with Europe began. All right. Then overseas, from other countries like China and all, people come here. From India, the Buddhist monks used to go to other countries to spread Buddhism. For example, Indians went to China, Indians went to Sri Lanka, Indians went to Cambodia, Mongolia, Persian region. Okay, so the religious people, traders, merchants, travelers, all these actually helped in mixing up the culture. And this is why it is called the period of great mobility. Okay, this mobility caused the changes in society, changes in economy, changes in polity, and hence the medieval time started its journey. Okay, now let's look at some particular examples. One is Rajputs. Rajput, a name derived from Rajaputra. Rajaputra means what? Raja means king, Putra means son. So Rajput means king's son or the son of the ruler. Okay, that is the literal word meaning of Rajput. So, between 8th and 14th century, the term was applied more generally to a group of warriors who claimed to be Kshatriyas. The term included rulers, chieftains and commanders who served in the armies of different monarchs all over the subcontinent. So, Rajputs, we know who Rajputs are. Correct? In the medieval times as well as in the modern India, we study about Rajputs who ruled over Rajasthan and Gujarat area. They were very, very bold, brave, dynasty people. You have seen that Padmavat movie. The Rajput glory is shown there in the Padmavat, the Johar and all these things. So that Rajput we know. But in medieval India, this term Rajput was not actually used to represent those dynasty, but it was used to represent anybody who claimed to be a good warrior and of a Kshatriya dynasty or Kshatriya class. Okay, so again, we are seeing the differences in terminologies from medieval and modern period. Okay, other groups of people such as Marathas, Sikhs, Jats, Ahoms, Kayasthas, etc. also started becoming important. So these are the births of dynasties in the medieval period. Rajputs came up, Marathas came up, Sikhs, Jats, Ahoms. Who are these Ahoms? Ahoms are those dynasties which ruled over Assam. Okay, you know the state of Assam, right? The northeastern India. Ahoms ruled over the area, Assam and the surrounding area. Okay, and then we have the Kayasthas also. Kayasthas is another group of people that came to prominence in the medieval period. So all these political groups started coming up in medieval period. Okay, and what happened? When more and more kingdoms, when more and more dynasties come up, normally or obviously they have to expand. The population is increasing. So we cannot always live in a riverbank and expect to have everything there itself. People have to move and expand. They have to expand their empires. Correct, na? So they started clearing forests. Okay, if you've seen the movie Mohenjo-daro, in the end of that film, the Mohenjo-daro is completely underwater. What happens? They move to Ganga and populate the Ganga region. That is how that film ends. Remember Hrithik Roshan moving to Ganga region and seeing that animal there and all these things. So similarly, people has to expand, had to move around from one place to another. So in order to do that, they started clearing forests. Okay, so they cleared forests and then they extended agriculture. Because more population means more food is necessary. Okay, so agriculture for sustenance has to be increased. So clearing forests, expansion of agriculture forced many forest dwellers to migrate. So city dwellers are expanding to forest. So what happens to the people who live in forest? Where would they go? So they also started migrating. Okay, so this is a period of migration. That is why this statement is very important. The great mobility, period of great mobility. Okay, now new peasant groups began to be influenced by regional markets, chieftains, priests, monasteries, temples, and significant economical and social differences emerged among peasants. Okay, so I told you, agriculture is expanding. Okay, from one region to other, they're clearing forest and expanding there also. So what happens? Normally, some peasants will, take in big tracts of land and increase the production of agriculture. Others will remain with whatever they have. So there will be a difference between two peasants. One person will be very rich because he has huge tracts of land under him. Other person might not be that rich. Okay, so this difference started coming up. So that economic inequality started coming up. And this economic inequality led to other inequalities also. For example, social inequality. Rich and the poor. Although it is economic inequality, even then in the society also there is a huge difference between how a rich person is treated and a poor person is treated. Okay, so such inequalities come to rise when agriculture expanded. Very important for your mains. Okay, then these social differences caused the emergence of jati or subcastes. Okay, so within the peasants itself, multiple number of subcastes started building up. Not just peasants, in all other castes also. Based on their position in the society, based on how much value that person is given in the society, this number of subcastes also started increasing. Okay, predominantly based on the occupation. Okay, but the ranks were not fixed permanently. For example, a poor person today can actually become rich tomorrow. Okay, and when he become rich tomorrow, he will be properly respected. So that movement from one subcaste to another was possible during this time. That is what I am saying. Okay, there was no, it is not permanently fixed that this particular group of people are always, lower caste. This particular people are always upper caste. No, nothing like that. There was flexibility between them, or there was movement between different castes based on occupation, based on economy, etc., etc. Okay, so the status of some same jati could vary from area to area. So one particular jati might be extremely powerful in South India, but in North India, that jati might not be that much powerful. It would be some other. So based on region also, the power and influence of various jatis changed. Okay, and jatis framed their own rules to manage and conduct their members. That we even know. Even now also, different jatis have different rituals, different rules and regulations in the society and all these things that we know now. Even now, say a person dies, okay, the final rites that is performed by different jatis are different. Okay, so each jati had their own rules and regulations, but the jatis were also required to follow the rules of their villages. All the jatis who are populating a particular village, who are staying in a village, will have to obey the rules of that village that is there. So the political authority has more power or binding power on all these jatis. Okay, so this is the time when we, just to recap this is the time when we see all these social differences started coming up in the medieval India. And once this started coming up, the cause of this was actually the expansion of agriculture. So the peasants started becoming different in different classes. Some are poor, some are rich, etc., based on their occupations and all. The ranks are not fixed, which means a poor person can become a rich person and a more influential person tomorrow. They are other way around also can happen. The status of same jatis are different in different parts of the country, and also there are specific rules for each and every jati, which is actually, although they are supposed to follow all the rules by the village chief. Okay, so this is basically about the social and political groups that came into being at that time. Sorry regarding the light, here a rain has started. 1 second. Okay, heavy rain is going on, so sound is a bit of an issue. Sorry for that. Okay, now let's move on to region and empire. Now we already saw the society, we saw the different groups coming up in different regions, but now we are going to specifically see how different regions differed each other and how empires started coming up. Okay, so the large states like those of Cholas, Tughlaqs, Mughals, etc. encompassed many regions. If you have seen a map of India of the Mughal empire, okay, for example, Akbar's empire was extended all the way from northwest, Afghanistan region, all the way to South India. Okay, not exactly, at least up till Narmada Valley, everything was under Akbar's rule. Which means what? East India, Central India, North India, Northwest India, all these was under one dynasty. Okay, so such dynasties which had huge power was able to influence a considerably larger region compared to petty kingdoms. There might be small, local kings here and there, whose land will be, only very just like a district today. Okay, and then there are huge empires which are able to influence a larger area, like the Mughals, like the Tughlaqs, like the Cholas. Okay, so a Sanskrit Prashasti praising Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban explained that he was the ruler of the vast empire that stretched from Bengal in the east to the Ghazni in Afghanistan in the west and included all of South India. Okay, so what is a Prashasti? I told you what a Prashasti is in the previous class. Prashasti means what? Prashasti is basically an inscription written on behalf of some king praising that particular person. Prashasti means praising, okay, praising a king. So a Prashasti from regarding Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban. Ghiyasuddin Balban was one of the strongest sultans in the Delhi Sultanate, and one of his Prashastis says that he was a ruler having very vast kingdom, very vast empire, all the way from Bengal, okay, or Gauda. Gauda is the older name of Bengal. So from Bengal to Ghazni. Ghazni is in what? Afghanistan area, Ghazni. And in the west, and included all of South India, the Dravida region also. This might be an exaggeration, okay. We cannot entirely rely on Prashastis because Prashastis are used to praise the kings and earn their favor. That's all. So we cannot exactly rely on this. But even then, look at this. One sultan is able to control such vast region, which means what? Which means all these regions will have something in common. That is what it means. Correct, right? We are all part of India. I am from Kerala, okay? And you might be from West Bengal or say Assam or Madhya Pradesh. Suppose you are from Delhi, okay? Kerala and Delhi are entirely different. We are two different states. We have two different languages and two different cultures, etc., etc. But even then, we are all part of India, and therefore we have many things in common. Understood? Same thing happens here also. Ghazni is different from Gauda. Gauda is different from Dravida. But all these regions had something in common because there was a central dynasty common to all these kingdoms, which was ruling these kingdoms. Okay, so why rulers kept claiming to have control over different parts of subcontinent? Okay, why did they do this? Why do they want to say that they ruled all these regions? Because of the same reason. Now I explained it to you regarding regions. Okay, so when they say that they ruled all these areas, say Ghazni, say Gauda, the Dravida, when they rule all these areas will have something in common. And this something in common will be political, could be economic, could be administrative, could be cultural, whatever it is. So every place in medieval India has individuality and commonality. Okay, so what is individuality? What is commonality? Individuality means what? Their own specific culture, their own specific language, their own specific food, their own specific cloth. That is individuality. What is commonality? Those things that are common to all of us. For example, consider India. In Kerala, we have Malayalam as our native language. Onam is our special festival. Okay, in Delhi, the language is Hindi. They have their own festivals. Okay, so this is individuality. They have their own, we have our own. But we all have common fundamental rights. We have common flag. We have common national anthem. This is commonality. Okay, so due to the large empires, even though there were large emperors, there was individuality within the commonality. Both these were features of ancient kingdoms and regions. Okay, so there were considerable conflict between these states. Occasionally, dynasties like Cholas, Khaljis, Tughlaqs, Mughals, etc. built an empire that was pan-regional, spanning diverse regions. Okay, not all these empires were equally stable or successful, that we know. So these dynasties, which were able to influence more power on more regions, were able to expand and span diverse regions. I already explained this point, so not going to bang on it anymore. While the Mughal Empire declined in the 18th century, it led to the re-emergence of regional states. But years of imperial and pan-regional rule had altered the character of the regions. Okay, so finally, what in 1857, okay, the Mughal Empire vanished. Okay, but until then, for about 300 years, they ruled almost all of India, all of Indian subcontinent. Okay, so what happened when they got destroyed or when they disintegrated? More and more regional kingdoms started coming up. Whenever the central authority is weak, the provinces try to get independence. That is the basic law. Okay, so more and more small kingdoms sprang up here and there. But even then, what happened? Because they were ruled by a common dynasty in the past, all these small new kingdoms had something in common. Okay, some culture or some aspects in common. Now, this is what I am trying to tell you about regionalism, regionality. Different regions, different cultures. Okay, that is individuality or regionality. But even then, there is a commonality. Emergence of many distinct and had traditions in the realms of governance, management of the economy, elite culture and language. Already explained. Regions felt the impact of larger pan-regional forces of integration without ever quite losing their distinctiveness. That is it. Within that commonality itself, there is individuality. Okay, so whenever there existed a large empire, they were able to influence a larger region. So that larger region would have something in common in cultural aspects or administrative aspects or economic aspect. Okay, but even then, there were specific individuality for all these different regions. This is like India only. Diversity within unity, or say unity within diversity. Okay, we are all different, but still there is something that binds us together. So that concept has emerged around this time. This is a beautiful mains question that can come up. Unity in diversity. The concept of unity in diversity is applicable to modern India as equally as medieval India. Discuss or critically examine. You can be asked such a question and you can give out all these examples that I have told you. Okay, so this is another, a map showing the things that I have told you until now. India subcontinent, the entire Indian subcontinent is shown to you here. Okay, and within this subcontinent itself, if you see, there are multiple number of around 24 different states, different regions, different cultures. Okay, so that is what you have to understand while studying this portion. Okay, so old and new regions. So we talked about a lot of things so far. We talked about social and political groups. We talked about historians and their sources. We then came to the region and empire, and now we are going to look at religion. Okay, already talked about technology and all. Now we are moving to religion. So major developments in religious traditions happened around this time in medieval period. In ancient India, the concept of religion was comparatively, not that prominent. I mean, Hinduism was there, Buddhism there, Jainism also. But Islam is not yet born. Christianity is not yet born. Okay, Christianity came only 2000 years ago. Islam came even after that. Okay, so the number of religions also increased around the medieval India. So Zoroastrianism came up, Confucianism came up, or many new kinds of religions started coming up. Okay, so people's belief in divine was sometimes personal, but sometimes it was collective. And the collective belief of the supernatural agency is called religion, was often closely connected with social and economic organization of local communities. So what is this religion and how did it influence medieval period? Okay, so religion is actually a byproduct of various belief systems of medieval times. Okay, so for some people, God is personal. Okay, I mean, we all know that. For example, say the Bhakti movement. When the Bhakti movement came up, they emphasized on the personal God, Krishna, for example. Okay, Krishna is supposed to be a personal God. But when there is a collective and there is a collective belief on something, then that agency will give rise to religion. If I am believing in something, that is my belief. It is personal to me. But if another, say 100,000 people are also believing on the same, then what does that mean? It means we are all believing in something same, which is like a cult. So that is what is a religion. Okay, so this religion was actually closely connected with social and economic organization of local communities. Different society, different economic conditions influenced religion. Say for example, Buddhism and Jainism. How did that come up? Buddhism and Jainism came up as a protest against Brahmanism, Brahmanical dominance. So in Brahmanism, there were 4 varnas. Okay, you know this. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. And Shudras were always looked down upon. Nobody cared about them. Nobody allowed them to, enter temple or chant Veda or anything. Okay. So Shudras were always excluded. So Buddhism and Jainism came up as a protest against Brahmanism, which means they allowed everybody to come in. Shudras were invited, Brahmanas were invited, Kshatriyas were. So all people, irrespective of any kind of discrimination, were allowed in Buddhism and Jainism. So what does that mean? It means Buddhism and Jainism came up as a social organization, as an economic organization. Okay, so the growth of religion is always associated with society or economy or some other such factors. Islam also, when you study world history, I will tell you about how Islam came up. And Islam is also actually a religion that is born out of social and economic changes. Okay, it didn't come up just like Hinduism came up. Every religion that came up in the past 3000 years has its own causes in society or economy or some other field. Okay, so worship of new deities started. Construction of temples by royalty and the growing importance of Brahmanas, etc. came up. Dominant position was consolidated by the support of their patrons or the rulers. Okay, so as the religions started coming up, Brahmanism also gained more and more prominence. So in Hinduism, number of gods increased. Earlier we had Agni, Varuna, Indra. These were the prominent gods. But what happened later? Gods like Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, etc. came up. And then now we have crores and crores of gods now. I mean, according to some saying, we have Hinduism has about 33 crore gods. Okay, so number of deities started to increase, which means what? Number of temples also started to increase. More and more deities means more and more temples for them. Okay, and these temples were built by kings or patrons. Okay, when number of temples increased, what happened? More and more Brahmanas came to be influential because they were the priests. They were the people who can do all the sacrifices in the temple. So the influence of Brahmanas increased. Okay, and the Kshatriyas required Brahmanas. Why? Because as per Indian system, only a Kshatriya is allowed to rule. Only a Kshatriya is a legitimate ruler. For a person who is not born as a Kshatriya, it is possible to become a Kshatriya if a Brahmana confers that title upon him. Okay, for example, Guptas. Guptas were actually Vaishyas. Sorry. Okay, Guptas were actually Vaishyas. Vaishyas means what? Merchant class, traders. Okay, but Guptas got the Kshatriya title. They were given this title by Brahmanas. So this was the arrangement. Guptas will give prominence and relevance to Brahmanas and uphold the Brahmanical order, giving gifts and sacrifice etc. to Brahmanas. In return, Brahmanas will acknowledge the ruling power of Guptas. So if a Brahmana, which is the highest class in the society, acknowledges that a particular group of people are Kshatriyas, then the society accepts that. So there was always this understanding between Kshatriya class and Brahmana class. Okay, so that settlement, that kind of relationship also started showing up more dominantly in the medieval Indian period. Okay, then emergence of the idea of Bhakti. We will talk about this more when we look into the Bhakti movement. But now let's just go with what this is. Okay, Bhakti means what? Personal God, more into devotion and giving a shape to the deity and all. I told you about this in the last class also. Say Vishnu. When we say Narasimha, okay, when we say Narasimha, it means half man and half lion. Correct. Who gave this shape? That is the question. Narasimha is described with a lion's head and a man's body with a gada in one hand, chakra in the other hand, lotus in one hand. So who is the person who actually give this figure to that deity? Okay, that manifestation came as a part of the Bhakti movement. So the gods and goddesses were all given these forms as we see now as a result of the Bhakti movement. Okay, we will look into that deeper on a later class. Okay, now merchants and migrants first brought the teachings of Holy Quran to India in the 7th century. So it was in the 7th century AD Islam came to India. Okay, Islam originated in the Arabic region, in the Persian region, and it came to India along with the merchants and migrants in the 7th century AD in India. Okay, so now number of religions in the country is increasing. Then, like Hinduism, Islam was interpreted in many ways. Within Islam itself, we are going to see some diversity. One, Shia Muslims. Another, Sunni Muslims. Hindus, we have many now. We have lots and lots of classes. Brahmanas, that 4 Varna classification is there. We have also caste kind of classification. Hundreds and hundreds of subcastes are there in Hinduism. Similarly, Islam has actually 2 dominant divisions. One is the Shia Muslims and the other is the Sunni Muslims. Shia Muslims are those Muslims who believe that Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law Ali was the legitimate leader. Okay, after the death of Prophet, the question was who was going to lead the religion after that. Okay, so some people said that Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law Ali is the legitimate ruler. And those people who believed this theory is known as Shia Muslims. Okay, for example, the country like Iraq and all has Shia Muslims. Then we have the Sunni Muslims. Sunni Muslims are those Muslims who believed in the authority of the early leaders or Khalifas of the community and the succeeding Khalifas. The Khalifas are the supreme leaders of Islam. Okay, so Sunni Muslims said that no, it is not the son-in-law of Prophet who is the legitimate leader. The legitimate leader is the Khalifa, the early leaders, different Khalifas of those times. Okay, so these were the 2 dominant branches of Islam, Shias and Sunnis. Don't forget their difference. Okay, so Indian Muslims are predominantly Sunnis. The second one. Okay, we have many Shia Muslims are also there in India, but the dominant category is the Sunnis. So see, we have seen lots and lots of religions springing up. Within the Brahmanism itself, there are different things going on. Between Kshatriya and Brahmana, there are different settlements. The idea of Bhakti coming in. Then Islam is being introduced in India. Then Islam also splitting into 2, Shia and Sunni. So this is the characteristic of medieval times. We see these kinds of developments and splittings and different jatis coming up all over the world. Okay, so this is one of the specific features of medieval times. Okay, now Tamil Nadu board NCERT, Tamil Nadu board is good for ancient India. Okay, while you study ancient India, you can study Tamil Nadu board. Otherwise, it's not required. I mean, for modern and medieval, not much. Only for ancient. Now, thinking about time and historical periods. Okay, so time reflects changes in social and economic organization, in persistence of transformation of ideas and beliefs. This is very basic statement. This can be asked for the UPSC mains quest as a question. Okay, you can be given this statement and asked to discuss or elaborate. Okay, so time reflects changes in social and economic organization in the persistence and transformation of ideas and beliefs. In the middle of 19th century, British historians divided the history of India into three: Hindu, Muslim, and British. Okay, this is very important. Okay, so when we study history of India, we can look at it in many ways. We can look at it like ancient India, medieval India, modern India, like that. Or we can say Hindu period, Muslim period, British period, like that. We can say some other kind of classification. All these are possible. But one of the classifications that the British historians came up with is this, based on religion. This was a very dangerous classification and it rightly proved to be so. Okay, so ignoring all the rich diversity of the Indian subcontinent, they classified Indian history as Hindu history, Muslim history, and British history. Hindu history is the ancient India, Muslim history is the medieval India, and British history is the modern India. So what is the danger here? When we talk about medieval India, it's like talking about Muslims. Okay, so if we say medieval India is stagnant, technologically stagnant, basically they are saying that the Muslim rulers made India stagnant. See how the British historians are playing their cards. They are trying to divide us, how they are implementing this. Okay, so instead of giving a proper timeline or based on some very quantifiable data, they actually went for religion as the basis of classification of history. And many Indians actually took this. Okay, they actually bited the bait and fell for the trap that the British set. Okay, that divide and rule policy has its basis in this theory. Now, most historians look to economic and social factors to characterize the major elements of different moments in past. That is correct. Economic and social factors are to be taken into consideration while looking into the major elements. Now, instead of religion, okay, instead of religion, it has to be economic and social factors. Spread of peasant societies, the rise of regional and imperial state formations, okay, pastoral and forest people, development of Hinduism, Islam, etc., etc., coming of European trading companies. These are various events, social as well as economic events that took place in the Indian history. So we can use all these in order to arrive at a much better classification of Indian history rather than going with religion as a classification. Okay, so the medieval period is often contrasted with the modern period. Modernity carries with it a sense of material progress and intellectual advancement. This seems to suggest that medieval period was lacking in any change whatsoever. This is wrong. Okay, when we say modern, what does that mean? Whenever we say modern, we mean that there is some material progress and some intellectual advancement. That is the definition or character of a modern society. But so when we say medieval, does that mean the medieval India was completely stagnant and without any change and all? No. Medieval India also saw some kind of changes at that time. The pace of that change may not have been exactly where we want it, but still it doesn't mean medieval India was actually a stagnant society. Okay, so these kinds of terminologies used by historians often causes lots of uproar. Okay, what exactly do you mean by modern? What exactly do you mean by medieval? If modern means material progress and intellectual advancement, does that mean medieval did not have any of these things? Okay, so these were the critical thinkings that has to be made while going through all the classifications of history. So now we come to the end of today's first chapter. One more chapter is there and we will end it there. At 6 p.m. itself, the class will be over. Okay, so in the first chapter, a very quick recap. We looked into what all things? We looked into tracing of history through maps. Why should the maps be relied and why cannot we rely on maps? What are the differences in making the maps? Okay, then we looked into some differences in terminologies that was used in various times. Then we looked into the sources of history from various historians and various periods of history. Then we looked into the political as well as social changes that has happened, technological advancements that came in. Then agricultural expansion, different jatis and subcastes coming up. Okay, then regionalism or individuality rising up along with commonality in the apex. Okay, rise of empires, different regions. Then new religions coming up, that itself getting split into two different factions. Okay, causing even more diversity. And then finally we saw how historians classified history based on various kinds of parameters: religion, economy, society, technology, all these things. So history can be classified based on all these things, and the more sensible classification would be social or economic organization rather than religion. Okay, so this is basically the summary of first chapter. Now we are moving to chapter 2, new kings and kingdoms. Okay, before moving to the chapter 2, let's look at the map here. Okay, just try to identify the areas of where the new rulers rule. This is very important. Okay, so if you are studying history optional, it is very important that you are able to map all this in a map, because in his in optional paper, history optional paper 1, okay, you have 50 marks in map. Okay, you will be asked 20 questions, 2.5 marks each, where you will be asked to identify a particular place in a map. Okay, so here you can see some rough estimate of where all did a particular dynasty rule and its capital and important centers and all. For example, Chahamanas ruled over this northwestern area. Okay, then Anartha in the Gujarat area, Rashtrakutas southwest, Cheras again Kerala region, Malabar region, Pandyas towards the Tamil Nadu region, Cholas central part of Tamil Nadu and some part of Andhra. Okay, Kalinga and Gangas, the Orissa region, Palas, West Bengal, okay, Kamruba, Assam region. So you have to be able to identify which dynasty ruled over which place. At least, some kind of idea should be there. Okay, so this map is very important. This is also given in your NCERT history textbook, standard 7. So please go through that. So the emergence of new dynasties. Okay, now what happened? Big landlords and war chiefs in different regions of the subcontinent called Samantas started to rise up. Okay, so we already studied about some dynasties like Mauryas, Guptas, Harshas, etc. But some very powerful landlords were also there here and there. Powerful landlords, or say warrior chiefs, or very influential people. Okay, what did they do? They actually gained some kind of independence from all the major dynasties, and these people were known as Samantas. Okay, they were expected to bring gifts for the king or the overlords, be present in their courts and provide them with military support. So Samantas were actually subordinated to the kings, but even then they had some kind of powers on their own. Okay, they were not completely independent kings. They were expected to do the bidding of the central powerful king, but even then they had some kind of autonomy within their own territories. Okay, so rise of Samantas is something very peculiar here. Declared themselves to be Mahasamanta, Mahamandaleshwara and so on. Some asserted their independence from their overlords. Okay, so gradually what happened? When the central control began to become loose and loose, these Samantas started to become even more and more powerful. So instead of just Samantas, they started to claim themselves as Mahasamantas, which means what? Really powerful Samanta. And Mahamandaleshwara, which means Lord. Mandaleshwara means the god of a particular territory. So Mahamandaleshwara means what? Supreme god of that area, that region. Okay, so such kind of titles were given to Samantas by themselves, which which give them a more and a kind of a higher authority. Although it's just a title, they tried to use that title as a power. Okay, and when the central control weakened, they tried to assert their own independence. Okay, and become separate. For example, Rashtrakutas in Deccan. Okay, you see in the map Rashtrakutas here with their capital at Manyakheda. This is the Deccan region. So Rashtrakutas ruled over the Deccan region. Okay, so the Rashtrakutas were actually subordinated to the Chalukyas of Karnataka. This was another very famous dynasty in the medieval period. So Rashtrakutas were actually subordinated to Chalukyas. But when the Chalukyan power weakened, a person called Dandidurga, who was a Rashtrakuta chief, overthrew the Chalukyan overlord and performed a ritual called Hiranyagarbha. Okay, so a Rashtrakuta chief named Dandidurga overthrew the Chalukyan throne and performed this ritual Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha means what? Hiranya means gold. Garbha means womb. So Hiranyagarbha means what? Golden womb, which means what? Of Kshatriya class. Okay, so whenever a person conducts a Hiranyagarbha ritual, it means that he is reborn as a Kshatriya. Okay, that is what Hiranyagarbha ritual is all about. We saw about what? Rajasuya, Vajapeya, Ashwamedha and all in the other class. Okay, similarly, Hiranyagarbha gives a ruler the legitimacy to rule. Gives him the title of a Kshatriya. Okay, so Dandidurga performed this ritual and overthrew the Chalukyan overlord and established the Rashtrakuta dynasty in the Deccan region. Okay, in other cases, men from enterprising families use their military skills to carve out their kingdoms. Obviously, this is one usual way of carving out kingdom. Use their military might to overthrow the lord and then make a kingdom of yourself. Okay, so example, Kadamba Mayura Sharman and Gurjara Pradihara Harishchandra were Brahmanas who gave up their traditional professions and took arms, successfully establishing the kingdoms in Karnataka and Rajasthan. So the Kadamba Mayura Sharman established his kingdom in Karnataka. Gurjara Pradihara's Harishchandra established his kingdom in Rajasthan. Both of them were actually Brahmanas. Okay, so the Kadamba dynasty as well as the Gurjara Pradihara dynasty were actually founded by Brahmins only, but they claimed to become Kshatriyas. They changed their profession from Brahmana to Kshatriya by using their military might. Understood? So by these kinds of different methods, different kings and kingdoms and dynasties emerged in the medieval period. Okay, for example, look at this picture here. Here the Narasimha Murti picture is shown. Okay, this picture is Narasimha, God Narasimha. This is actually a creation of the Rashtrakuta dynasty. Okay, Rashtrakuta dynasty created by Dandidurga with the capital at Manyakhe are the patrons of art, and this very famous Narasimha statue from the Deccan region is actually attributed to the Rashtrakuta period. Okay, now administration in these kingdoms. So now we have different kingdoms in different places. We also saw how people got that legitimacy to rule. Okay, based on rituals, based on army power, muscle power, and all these things. Now, administration in these kingdoms. How did the administration happen? High-sounding titles like Maharajadiraja, Tribhuvana Chakravartin, etc. Were taken by different kings. Okay, Maharajadiraja. Instead of just Rajadiraja or just Raja, people are taking Maharajadiraja, supreme king of kings. Okay, like then Tribhuvana Chakravartin, Chakravarti, emperor of 3 worlds. Okay, these kinds of impressive titles were taken by many of the medieval kings just to glorify themselves, that's all. Maybe he would be only ruling a small principality, but even then he called himself Maharajadiraja, so that at least by name he will have that kind of glory or power. Okay, shared power with the Samantas as well as associations of peasants, traders, Brahmanas, etc. So medieval kingdoms were they were actually ruled with the help of other class of people like the Samantas. I told you, Samantas provide the king with army and all during wars. Okay, they help the king in collecting taxes and all these things. So kings ruled with the help of Samantas, associations of peasants, traders, Brahmanas, so on. Okay, the resources were obtained from producers. So every society, for it to sustain, need resources. Say meat, or say vegetables or cereals, whatever it is, they want some kind of resources. These resources are available with the producers, the peasants, the cattle keepers, the artisans. These are the producers of the society. They have all the necessities. Then these kinds of people the producers were either compelled or persuaded to surrender a part of their produce. Okay, sometimes they were persuaded to give some part of their produce instead of something else. Sometimes they were asked to, they were compelled to do that by force, giving their produce to the king. Sometimes it was taken as rent. Sometimes it was taken as tax. Okay, so all these different methods were used for collecting various resources from different groups of people. Okay, now these resources were used to finance king's establishment as well as the construction of temples, forts, etc., and also to fight wars. So what were the uses of these resources? Obviously for the king's establishment, that is there. Then construction of temples. So if you collect some tax as coins from different area and you put it together, then you will have enough to create a magnificent architectural construction. For example, temple or a fort. Okay, then also to fight wars. Wars are hugely demanding. The money is very important to conduct wars. Okay, the economy has to be strong, otherwise that kingdom will lose the war. So for conducting wars also, this kind of resources were collected from various places. The functionaries for collecting revenue were generally recruited from influential families and the position were often hereditary. So who are the people who collect the taxes? Right now we have different positions, right? We have the village officer, tahsildar, collector, etc. They are appointed based on various qualifications. During those times, collection of tax was actually a very impressive job occupation. Okay, and this was given to only very influential people. Okay, highly powerful influential people, and this position was often hereditary. So after the time of the father, it is automatically given to the son and then to his grandson and so on and so on. Okay, so the collection of taxes were actually given to exclusive functionaries like influential families and the position was hereditary. There is a very famous Chola inscription. Okay, Chola inscription of Uttaramerur. Okay, this is a very famous Chola inscription which talks about Sabha and all different kinds of social organizations that existed in medieval times. Okay, so one of those Chola inscriptions talks about more than 400 terms of different kinds of taxes. Imagine. We have what? Professional tax, GST tax, income tax, sales tax, VAT, all these are our taxes. During those times, one of the Chola inscriptions actually tells us about 400 different types of taxes that existed. Alright, one of them, the most commonly seen, is the Vetti, or also called Vishti. Okay, Vishti and Vetti are the same and they refer to forced labor. Okay, some of the taxes are given in cash and some of the tax is extracted as labor. Okay, those taxes extracted as labor, as forced labor, is called Vishti or Vetti. Okay, and the land revenue that is paid is called Kadamai. Kadamai is the land revenue and the forced labor is Vetti. Don't forget. Now, there was also taxes for thatching the house, using of ladder to climb palm trees, cess on the succession to family property, so on and so on. Okay, so these kinds of different taxes were also imposed in the medieval times. Now let's look at prashastis and land grants. Okay, one thing about prashasti is that most of them may not be reliable. Okay, I told you Samudragupta's prashasti written by Harisena does not actually give us the correct picture of Samudragupta. It talks about Samudragupta as God. Okay, basically picturizes the king as the god. But how much can we rely on it historically, factually? That is the question. Okay, most of the prashastis cannot be relied upon 100%. We can use it for some kind of idea, but 100% reliability is not there. So, may not be true. Now, how rulers want to depict themselves? That is what prashasti is all about. Okay, how do rulers want to present themselves in front of the people? That is what is prashasti. They can be said as valiant, victorious warriors, courageous, mighty, conqueror of 3 worlds. Okay, these are written in prashasti. This is basically how the ruler wants to present himself. That's all. Nothing true. Okay, now composed by learned brahmanas who occasionally helped in administration. kings often rewarded Brahmanas by grant of land. Okay, so these prashastis, most of them are actually performed or created or written by Brahmanas, and in return kings give Brahmanas land grants because they are very pleased with the way they wrote about the king. Okay, so land grants to Brahmanas increase at this time, and the number of prashastis also increase, but prashastis are just hollow empty words which are not reliable. Okay, but the land grants increase to Brahmanas. This kind of land grants were known as Brahmadeya. Land grants given to Brahmanas are known as Brahmadeya. Okay, we will look into what Brahmadeya is later, but just understand the definition. The land grants given by the king to the Brahmanas are known as Brahmadeya lands. Now, among all these prashastis and irreliable books, there is one stand-apart book. Okay, anyone can tell me the name of this book? I will just read this passage. Can anybody tell me what the name of this book is? Okay. Unusual for the 12th century was a long Sanskrit poem containing the history of the kings who ruled over Kashmir. It was composed by the author named Kalhana. He used a variety of sources including inscriptions, documents, eyewitness accounts and early histories to write his account. Unlike the writers of prashastis, he was often critical about the rulers and their policies. What is the name of this book? Can anyone tell me? No? This is a very famous book written by Kalhana called Rajatarangini. Okay, the name of this book is Rajatarangini. Alright, this was written by Kalhana. Kalhana is a very famous author in the medieval times who wrote about the Kashmir kings. Okay, kings of Kashmir. And this is one of those books that are highly reliable, unlike other sources in medieval India. Okay, other sources I told you, highly irreliable, just praising, exaggeration, etc. etc. But Rajatarangini tells us about the kings of Kashmir, and that is a very factual book. He do not simply praise the kings, he also critically analyzed their rules and reigns. Okay, so this was an exception regarding the medieval Indian literature. Okay, now warfare for wealth. So due to the number of, yes, Sona, very good, you know, got it correct. Due to the number of dynasties or the number of kingdoms that started rising up here and there, what happened? There often had this clash between different kingdoms. Okay, we have India, Pakistan, China, etc. and we are at war. I mean, we are always at, you know, some kind of tussle between Pakistan and China. Now, same goes to earlier kingdoms also. We had often this fight or war between Gurjara Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas and Palas. Okay, Kanauj was actually a place in Ganga Valley. Okay, this Kanauj was actually very fertile, very strategic and very important place in medieval India. So for the occupation of Kanauj, people always were at war. Okay, just like for Kashmir right now, India is at loggerheads with Pakistan for wanting Kashmir. Similarly, for Kanauj, during the medieval times, 3 kingdoms were at war. Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas and Palas. Since 3 kingdoms were at war, this is known as tripartite struggle. Okay, there were 3 kingdoms at war, so it was known as tripartite struggle. Okay, rulers also tried to demonstrate their power by building large temples. Okay, they were always at war, and those who won the war often get the loots and all, lots of money also coming up. So the winner king will always erect a large temple or say large monument so that he can glorify his power. Okay, this was seen predominantly in medieval India. One of the best examples is that Muhammad of Ghazni of Afghanistan. Okay, he came to India and plundered all over India many times. About 17 times he looted throughout India. Okay, including the Somanath temple. You might know about this. The Somanath temple was plundered by Muhammad Ghazni. Why did he do that? Why did he go to that temple instead of palace or some other place? Because these temples were areas where all these riches were included. Okay, or I told you, whenever the king win a war, or else to glorify his power, the kings used to build rich temples, which means temples were the abode of many riches, many precious stones, many gold coins, devotees giving various kinds of things to the temple. All these are available in the temple. So temple is very rich in medieval times. And Muhammad Ghazni attacked the Somanath temple and plundered away lots and lots of things. Is an example of the fact that temples of the medieval India were actually highly rich areas. Another example, Al-Biruni in his Arabic work Kitabul Hind. Okay, this book is very important for our historical studies, and he says that in his book, while writing his book, he consulted with various Sanskrit scholars and prepared an account, okay, on what all he saw in India. Actually, Muhammad of Ghazni's Al-Biruni came to India along with Muhammad of Ghazni. Okay, so Muhammad of Ghazni, after plundering India, wanted to understand how Indians lived and what was the conditions on India. For that, he asked Al-Biruni to stay in India and find out how the people of India lived. Okay, so Al-Biruni wrote a book in Arabic. In Arabic language, he wrote a book, and this book is known as Kitabul Hind. And in this book, he defines about the society and conditions of India during that time. Okay, other kings who engaged in warfare included the Chahamanas, later known as Chauhans, who ruled over Delhi and Ajmer, Chalukyas of Gujarat, Gahadawalas of western Uttar Pradesh, etc. Very important again for your prelims. You have to understand which dynasty ruled over which place. I told you in the first slide while I showed you the maps. Okay, so Chahamanas, also known as Chauhans, they ruled over Delhi and Ajmer. Okay, Chalukyas or the Solankis ruled over Gujarat. Chalukyas are also sometimes called as Solankis. Okay, Solankis ruled over Gujarat, and then Gahadawalas ruled over western Uttar Pradesh. Okay, the best known Chahamana ruler, Prithviraj III, who defeated the Afghan ruler named Sultan Mahmud Ghori in 1191, but lost to him in the very next year, 1192. This is a very famous king in the Indian history, Prithviraj III. Okay, he fought a very historical battle with another king named Muhammad Ghori. Can anybody tell me what the name of this battle is? Any idea? Anyone? Very famous battle in 1191, and the second battle was in 1192, where in the first battle Prithviraj won against Muhammad Ghori. In the second battle, Muhammad Ghori defeated Prithviraj Chauhan. What is the name of this battle? Come on, someone. Very famous battle as far as Indian history is concerned. Battle of? No idea? It is known as Battle of Terrain. Okay, first Battle of Terrain was fought in 1191, in which Prithviraj Chauhan defeated Muhammad Ghori, and in the second Battle of Terrain, Muhammad Ghori defeated Prithviraj Chauhan. Okay, very important two battles in Indian history. It is known as the Battle of Terrain. Don't forget. Okay, now finally, okay, this is the final section of the day. We are going to look at Cholas. Okay, Cholas administration, Cholas polity, Cholas economy, and all these things. And after that, we will finish by 6 p.m. So, Cholas' initial capital was at Urayur. Okay, later it was changed to Thanjavur, but Urayur was their initial capital. Okay, so a minor chiefly family known as the Muttariyar held over power in the Kaveri Delta. So look at this map. Okay, if you look closely, you can see the Kaveri river here. Here it is, River Kaveri. Okay, this is a very important South Indian river, River Kaveri. So this family, a chiefly family known as the Muttariyar, held over power in the Kaveri Delta. This family was actually subordinated to the Pallava kings. Pallava kings ruled over this region. Okay, up to this. This was the region ruled by Pallavas. Alright. So what happened was, a man called Vijayalaya, okay, a man called Vijayalaya, who belonged to the ancient chiefly family of Cholas of Urayur, captured the Kaveri Delta from the Muttariyar in the middle of 9th century. Okay, in the middle of 9th century, a person called Vijayalaya, who is from the Chola family, captured this area, Kaveri Delta, from the Muttariyar family. Okay, and he built a new town there called the Tanjavur. Okay, and a temple for a goddess Nishumba Sudini. Okay, so Vijayalaya is the person who constructed the city of Tanjavur, and a temple was made for the goddess Nishumba Sudini. Okay, then, so Vijayalaya is the founder of Cholas. Who founded Chola dynasty? It is Vijayalaya. But the prominent king of the Chola dynasty came later in the 10th century, and he is Rajaraja I. Rajaraja I is considered as the most powerful Chola ruler who ruled the empire, and he is the person who built the Brihadishwara temple. Okay, the very famous Brihadishwara temple was actually constructed by Rajaraja I in the 10th century AD. Okay, his son, Rajaraja's son, was Rajendra Chola. Okay, Rajaraja's son was Rajendra I. He was actually another very good king, and he even raided Ganga Valley. He went to the north, annexing various kingdoms, and he managed to reach Ganga Valley. Okay, that is why he got the title Gangaikonda. So, which Chola king is known as Gangaikonda? Answer is Rajendra I. Okay, so Rajendra I even raided the Ganga Valley, annexed Sri Lanka and other Southeast Asian countries, and also developed a navy for expeditions. Okay, so very prominent king Rajendra I. So Rajaraja I, his father, and Rajendra I together built a very famous city called Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Okay, very famous city Gangaikonda Cholapuram was constructed by two people, Rajaraja I and his son Rajendra I. Okay, don't forget, Tanjavur was constructed by whom? Vijayalaya, who is the founder of Chola dynasty. Okay, Vijayalaya was the founder of Chola dynasty, who also founded the Tanjavur city. Gangaikonda Cholapuram is founded by Rajaraja I and Rajendra I. Okay, now let's look at some temples, some splendid temples and bronze sculptures that happened during the Chola period. The big temples of Tanjavur and Gangaikonda Cholapuram are built by Rajaraja and Rajendra. I just told you that. Okay, this Tanjavur city was built by Vijayalaya, but the temples of Tanjavur, for example, Brihadishwara temple was built by Rajaraja I. Gangaikonda Cholapuram was constructed together by Rajaraja I and Rajendra I. Okay, now Chola temples were often the nuclei of settlements which grew around them. Okay, temples were not exactly the modern notion of temples. It is something different. In those days, temples were not just the place of worship. It was also the place of learning, education. It was also the place of arts. It was also the place of commercial activity, trade, etc. etc. So the temple was the nucleus of the society. Around the temple, different craftsmen were there, artisans were there, merchants and traders were there. So temple was the nucleus of development. Okay, so temples were also endowed with land by rulers as well as others. So since temples held this kind of influence in the society, temples were given free lands as gifts by influential people as well as rulers. This kind of land grants were known as Devadana. Okay, so earlier we saw land grants to Brahmanas that were known as Brahmadeya. Okay, land grants to temples are known as Devadana. Clear? Now, the produce of this land went into maintaining of the specialists who worked in the temple. So, obviously, temple has lots of specialists. Priests are there, people need to make garland, people have to cook the prasada, musicians are there, dancers are there, the cleaning people are there. So, all these people had to be paid adequately. So, all the revenue obtained from these land grants were used for these purposes within the temple itself. Temples were not only places of worship, they were hub of economic, social and cultural life as well. I already explained this to you. Making of bronze images was most distinctive. While most images were deities, some images were made of devotees as well. Very important for your prelims. Okay, Chola bronze statues are world famous, one of the best in the world. Chola bronze statues. So what are the themes or subjects of this sculpture? That is very important. Okay, Chola bronze statues were not just of gods or deities, they were also of devotees and dynasties and kings, etc., etc. So secular characters were also present in Chola bronze statues. That is what I am telling. Not just religious statues. Okay, make it very clear. This is a very interesting prelims question. So make sure to learn this statement very well. Okay, now let's look at the agriculture and irrigation. We are almost at the end of the class. Agriculture and irrigation. So we looked at Chola, how the polity of Chola emerged. We looked at temples and bronze statues. Now to agriculture. So many achievements were made by Cholas in the field of agriculture. The most important feature is that Kaveri Delta is full of alluvial soil. Okay, the river Kaveri, look at the map again, Kaveri here. Okay, by the time it reaches Bay of Bengal, it actually branches into various distributaries like this. Okay, forming deltas. These deltas often get flooded. And when flood recedes, what happens? Lots and lots of alluvial soil is there, which is extremely good for cultivation. Okay, also Kaveri river provides the required moisture and water for irrigation. So it was an ideal land for cultivation. That is what I am saying. Okay, now although agriculture developed in other parts of Tamil Nadu, it was only in 5th or 6th century that this area opened up for large scale cultivation. Okay, forests had to be cleared in some regions, land had to be leveled, in delta region embankments had to be built, etc., etc. So these kinds of activities, development in agriculture, happened during the Chola period. Although agriculture was predominant even before Cholas, this kind of organization or structure came in the time of Cholas. Building of embankments, leveling of other areas, clearing of forest, using of this delta region, all these enhanced during the time of Cholas. In many areas, 2 crops were grown in a year. See, agriculture is now becoming more and more commercial. Okay, so people understood that it is possible to grow multiple crops in the same field at different times. Okay, so more and more innovation, more and more technology is coming to fore. Look at this picture. Here you can see a sluice gate. Okay, a sluice gate. This is actually used in the ancient times to outpour a particular amount of water, just like our dams these days. When the water level is high, the dams is the shutter opens a bit, 1 or 2 inches, and the extra water is flown out. Same way, the sluice gate was used in the earlier period to regulate the water flow. Okay, so this was also constructed during the Chola dynasty. A variety of methods were used for irrigation. Irrigation works required planning, organized labor, resources, maintaining these works and deciding how water is to be shared. So irrigation also developed during the Chola time. So obviously agriculture and irrigation enhanced during the period of Cholas. Okay. Now administration of the empire. So we looked at polity. We looked at temples and bronze statues. We looked at agriculture and irrigation. Now we are looking at administration. Okay. So how was the administration in Chola period? Settlements of peasants were known as Ur or Ur. Okay, however you want to pronounce it, Ur or Ur. This was the settlement of peasants, important for prelims, don't forget. Alright, then groups of such villages formed a larger unit called Nadu. Okay, so Ur, Nadu. Alright, now rich peasants were called Vellalas and exercised considerable control over the affairs of Nadu under the supervision of central government. Okay, so the rich peasants are known as Vellalas and they had a good say in the control of Nadu. Chola kings gave some rich landowners titles like Muvenda Velan, Arayar, etc. as a mark of respect and entrusted them with important offices. So another prelims question. I have seen this question come in prelims. Muvenda Velan. Muvendavelan is a post given by or seen in which of the following dynasties? Answer is Cholas. Okay, Muvendavelan is a title. Muvendavelan means what? A person. Muvendavelan means a Velan or a Vellala who actually serves 3 kings or 3 masters. Okay, that is Muvendavelan. So, Vellalas are rich peasants. So, if that rich peasant served 3 kings, then he is given the title Muvendavelan, which means even more powerful. Okay, similarly, Arayar. Arayar means a person who is a chief or an administrator or of a ruling class. So, these kind of titles were often given in the Chola period to various influential people. Okay, now Brahmadeya land led to large number of Brahmana settlements in Kaveri Delta. Brahmadeya was looked after by an assembly or sabha of prominent Brahmana landholders. Okay, I already told you what a Brahmadeya land is. Land grants given to Brahmanas. Okay, so this land has to be taken care of. It cannot be left fallow. Agriculture has to be done, expanded. Only then you can collect revenue. Correct. So, what happened now? This Brahmadeya land together were governed by an assembly known as Sabha. Okay, so Sabha was an assembly of Brahmana landholders which looked into the Brahmadeya land. We know about this from the Uttaramerur inscriptions in the Chengalpettu district of Tamil Nadu. Very, very important again for prelims. Okay, Uttaramerur inscriptions tells us about Chola's administration. Okay, which among the following inscriptions tells you about Chola administration? Correct answer, Uttaramerur inscriptions. Don't forget, very, very important. Now, associations of traders were called Nagarams. Okay, also occasionally performed administrative functions in towns. Another, again, terminology, Nagaram. Nagaram means associations of traders. Okay, associations of Brahmanas are known as Sabha. Associations of traders are known as Nagarams. Clear? So this slide is completely filled with prelims points. Very important for prelims, the entire slide. So make sure to study all these points. Okay, very, very important. Now we are moving to the end of this session. Just 2 more slides. Types of land. Okay, what are the different types of land that the Chola inscriptions mention? First type is known as Vellalan Vagai. Okay, Vellalan Vagai land. This land is for non-Brahmana peasant proprietors. Okay, non-Brahmana peasants, not for Brahmanas. Okay, non-Brahmanas. Brahmadeya. Brahmadeya means gifted to Brahmanas. That I already told you. So, Vellalan Vagai, not for Brahmanas. Brahmadeya, for Brahmanas. Okay, then Shalabhoga. Shalabhoga is a land given for maintenance of school. Okay, Shala, school. Bhoga, for the maintenance. So, Shalabhoga means a land given for the maintenance of school. Then, Devadana or the Tirunamattukani. Okay, Tirunamattukani or the Devadana land is given for temples. I told you that also. Temples were the focal area or the nucleus of Chola towns. So, they were given land grants for their upkeep. And this was known as Tirunamattukani or Devadana land. Then we have Pallichandam. Okay, Pallichandam is a land donation to Jaina institutions. Not just Hindu temples, but Jaina temples also received land grants in Chola administration. Okay, and such land grants were known as Pallichandam. These are also very, very important for your prelims. Okay, Vellalan Vagai, Brahmadeya, Shalabhoga, Devadana and Tirunamattukani. Finally, Pallichandam. Won't forget na, I will upload the PDF in my Telegram channel. Make sure to study from it. Okay. Finally, the last slide. Who could be a member of the Sabha? I told you, in the Brahmadeya system, the land grants given to the Brahmanas were collectively looked after by a Sabha. Okay, Sabha is an assembly of Brahmanas who looked after the Brahmadeya lands. So, who can be a member of Sabha? Okay, in the Uttaramerur inscriptions, we get the qualifications that are required to become a member of a Sabha. So that qualifications include, the person should be a Brahmana, obviously, and he should be owner of the land from which revenue is collected. Okay, so that Brahmana should be a landowner from where revenue is collected. should have their own homes. Okay, the Brahmana should have his own home. Should be between the age of 35 and 70. Okay, anything less or anything more is not applicable. Right now we have, in order to participate in the Lok Sabha elections, you have to be 25 years old. Upper age limit is not there, but lower age limit is 25. Similarly, here the lower age limit is 35. Upper age limit is also there here, that is 70 years. Then, should have knowledge on Vedas and should be well versed in administrative manners and should be honest. Okay, so the person has to be well versed in Vedas, he should be well versed in administrative matters and he should be honest. That is also important. Now, if anyone has been a member of any committee in the last 3 years, he cannot become a member of another committee. So the Sabha has had actually subcommittees for looking after various things. Okay, so within the Brahmadaya land itself, there is some part for agriculture, some part for irrigation, some part for house building, etc., etc., etc. So subcommittees were formed to look after each of these different activities. Okay, so any person who has been a member of any of these committees in the past 3 years cannot become a member this time. Okay, cannot contest the elections. And finally, anyone who has not submitted his accounts and those of his relatives cannot contest in elections. Just like now. Now we have to declare our assets and liabilities before the election. Correct? Similarly, those times also, the person, the Brahmana, has to submit his own accounts and the accounts of his relatives also in order to contest in this election. Otherwise, he will not be allowed to become a member of the Sabha. Okay, and do you know how this function? All these names finally were put in a pot. Then a small boy is asked to take a lot from it, and whose name come from it will be elected. That is how the election happened. It was not polling or universal adult franchise or anything. It was more of a lucky draw. Okay, all the eligible persons' names are collectively put in a pot, and a small boy is asked to take one lot from it, and whatever comes out, he gets to be a member. This is how it worked. The Sabha elections worked. Okay, so this is also very important. In order to qualify to be a member of a Sabha, he should have his own land, he should have his own home, should be between 35 and 70 years of age, should have knowledge of Vedas and well versed in administration and be honest. Finally, he cannot be a member of any committees in the past 3 years. Also should submit his accounts and also those of his relatives. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this session. I hope you are very clear with whatever I have taught you. Okay, so we looked into Cholas in depth today. That is very important also. Cholas is a very important topic for your UPSC, and I have went into good depth as far as Cholas are concerned. Okay, now just go through these PDFs again once I upload them, and you will be very thorough. Okay, so tomorrow also the classes will go on. Tomorrow is Tuesday, so the class will start with the quiz and then we will get back with chapters. Okay, again at 4 PM only. And this is my code MSRW1. So if you want to get an Unacademy subscription, you can use this code to avail 10% discount. Okay, and here in this Telegram channel, I will upload the PDF of this lesson very soon. Okay, so that is it. Bye bye. See you again tomorrow. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Okay, otherwise, see you again tomorrow.